Perhaps one of the strangest paradoxes about the Costa Concordia, it didn't sink in the middle of a remote ocean. There was no storm, no waves rising like 10-story buildings, no pitch-black night swallowing distress signals. It sank near the shore, close enough that thousands of people could see the lights of Giglio Island, close enough that some people actually swam to land and survived. And the most terrifying part? It sank in the place that was supposed to be the safest in the entire journey. The Costa Concordia was not an old ship, not a war vessel, not a failing machine waiting to collapse. It was a modern cruise ship worth over $570 million, owned by one of the largest cruise corporations in the world, carrying more than 4,200 people across the Mediterranean Sea. On board, there was everything. Restaurants, casinos, dozens of lifeboats, advanced safety systems. Everything that civilization promises to make people believe they cannot be in danger. But then, between the sound of metal screaming in the dark, between corridors slowly tilting like a collapsing building, and seawater rushing in as if the entire ocean was crawling inside the ship, thousands of people began screaming at the same time. Not because they didn't understand what was happening, but because they had just realized something. Everything that was never supposed to fail had completely failed. And the most terrifying paradox of that night was not that the ship was sinking, but that many people still couldn't believe it could sink, even as the floor beneath their feet was already tilting. Because sometimes, the most dangerous thing about modern civilization is not that it is weak, but that it convinces people there are things that are simply not allowed to collapse. And when those things do collapse, they don't just destroy a ship. They destroy the belief of thousands of people in a single moment. The floating city. The Costa Concordia felt less like a ship and more like a floating city. Everything inside was designed to make people forget they were in the middle of the sea. Warm golden lights, music, the smell of food, the sound of glasses clinking in restaurants, children running through corridors, couples taking photos on deck, people drinking wine as the ship glided across the Mediterranean. No one was thinking about catastrophe. Because cruise ships are built to sell a feeling that humanity has already overcome danger. Modern civilization tells people technology will protect you, procedures will protect you, systems will protect you. And the most terrifying part, most of the time, that is true. That's why when the system collapses, the human brain struggles to accept it immediately. The captain Francesco Schettino was not inexperienced. He had spent years at sea, trained, trusted, responsible for thousands of lives. And that's exactly what made passengers feel safe. A calm voice, a perfect uniform, a man who looked like he was always in control. That night, Schettino made a decision. he steered the Costa Concordia closer to Giglio Island than usual, a maneuver known as a salute, a gesture, bringing the ship close to shore to greet the island. This wasn't war, not an emergency, not a natural catastrophe. Everything began with a human decision. The first sound. Then came the sound. A long, deep, wrong sound. Passengers later said they felt the entire ship vibrate. Plates fell, glasses shattered, lights flickered. People lost balance. Somewhere beneath the black water, the hull had been torn open by rocks. And the most terrifying part? For the first few minutes, most passengers still believed it was just a minor technical issue. Because humans don't easily accept that something they trust is dying right in front of them. Everything is under control. That was the most repeated sentence that night. Everything is under control. Crew members told passengers to stay calm. Many were asked to return to their cabins. Some even laughed, thinking it was just a minor inconvenience. But beneath the ship, water was already flooding in. Engines were losing power, systems were failing, and the massive ship was slowly tilting. The most dangerous moment in many disasters is not when danger begins, but when it has already begun and authority still refuses to tell the truth. Chernobyl, Bhopal, Deepwater Horizon, Seawall, they all share the same pattern. The system has collapsed, but humans try to preserve the illusion that everything is fine. The ship tilts. At first, it was subtle. A slight imbalance. Wine glasses sliding across tables, chairs shifting, people grabbing railings to walk. Then the angle increased. Corridors began to feel like a collapsing building. Lights shut off in sections. Metal groaned deep within the hull. Seawater began flooding staircases. And the most terrifying part? The Costa Concordia had not fully sunk yet. It was dying. Slowly. Like modern civilization itself. Collapsing in front of thousands of people. Then panic finally arrived. People ran through tilted hallways. Children screamed. Elderly passengers fell. Luggage slid everywhere. Many lifeboats couldn't be deployed properly because the ship's angle was too extreme. And the most terrifying part? Many still didn't understand how serious the situation really was. The human brain has a strange defense. When reality becomes too horrifying, it delays acceptance. That's why many people on the Costa Concordia tried to behave normally, even as the ocean was already entering the ship. The elevator. This may be the most horrifying part of the entire disaster. Not the ocean, not the darkness, not the screams, but the elevator. Some passengers still used it because they didn't understand what was happening. Then the power failed. The elevator stopped. Inside a tilting ship. Water began rising from below. Imagine that. Total darkness, the space slowly tilting, cold water touching your feet, and realization arriving slowly. No one is coming. This is no longer a maritime disaster. This is pure existential horror. The captain leaves. Then something unthinkable happened. Francesco Schettino left the ship before all passengers were evacuated. The man who should have stayed last was among the first to leave. That was the moment the catastrophe became a moral collapse. The greatest fear now was no longer the ocean. It was the realization that authority had abandoned you. Passengers began saving themselves, climbing tilted corridors, holding onto railings, sliding across walls that had become floors. The ship felt like a dying building in the middle of the night sea. Get back on board. Then came the radio call. An Italian Coast Guard officer realized Schettino was no longer on board, and he shouted through the radio, "Get back on board. That is an order." The voice was filled with anger, disbelief, humiliation. And the most terrifying part, this was not a movie scene. It actually happened. Somewhere in the dark sea, a man was trying to force a captain to return to his dying ship to save his own passengers. That was the moment the world understood. Costa Concordia was not just a ship disaster. It was a story about trust collapsing in the middle of catastrophe. The safest place. The Costa Concordia finally lay tilted near the shore of Giglio. Lights were almost gone. Water continued flooding the ship. Some were trapped in darkness. Some climbed corridors like walls. Some could only pray. And the most terrifying part, land was right there. People could see the island lights, yet many still couldn't escape. This is the most horrifying paradox of Costa Concordia. The place people felt safest became the place they died. Costa Concordia did not sink in the North Atlantic. No iceberg, no massive storm, no endless remote ocean. It sank near shore, on a modern ship designed to make people believe everything was under control. And maybe that's why this disaster feels so haunting. Not because the ocean was too powerful, but because human systems were too fragile. And the most terrifying truth, the first thing that abandoned thousands of people that night was not the sea. It was the very person assigned to keep them alive. And somewhere inside that tilted ship, many people realized for the first time, modern civilization does not eliminate danger. It only makes people forget that danger never left. Until the moment everything begins to collapse beneath their feet.